You hear a bump in the night. Your camera catches a ghostly face in frame. You feel a presence and you swear that someone or something is there. You try to tell yourself there's a rational reason, an explanation of why you're seeing or feeling these things. Or maybe it's a paranormal entity or a ghost. And I know some of you may not believe, but maybe after some of these stories, you'll change your mind. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. You might know me from my true crime channel, Kimbyrleigha. I am Kimbyrleigha or Kimbyr, and this is Candidly Kimbyr. And on this channel, we'll be diving into some of the most creepy and interesting real life stories from around the web, mostly focusing on one of my favorite places, Reddit. And today we're going to be diving into some more spooky paranormal stories by request, and keep them coming. These definitely had me up all night after hearing about them. So let's jump into the first story from a very new subreddit we haven't visited before called Cryptids. Am I saying that right? This is described as a place for discussion of animals unknown to science and all things cryptid related, whether you're looking for Sasquatch or maybe the more bizarre cryptids. We wish you happy cryptid hunting. Now, I had never heard of this before. Okay. And this story is called, I Had a Terrifying Encounter in the Appalachian Mountains and I'm Looking for Answers. Immediately, this reminded me of my friend Stephanie Harlow and her Halloween episodes this year. She dedicated them to Appalachia. It was really intense and creepy. But here goes. They wrote, let me start by saying I've lived in the Appalachian Mountains all of my life and I've experienced a lot of strange things. My family was Irish and settled in West Virginia, but I currently live in North Carolina portion of these wonderful mountains. That being said, I learned a lot about what really lurks in these dark woods, but this was nothing I had ever experienced before. It all began with my golden retriever, Ozzy, growling like I'd never heard before. He literally never growls, so that had me already uncomfortable. But this growl was bone-chilling. It was like he was getting ready to have a fight for his life or something. I took both him and my other dog out at around 11 p.m., and he would not leave my side. I noticed that my workshop door was open, so I walked down to close and lock it up. The entire time, he is glued to my side. Ozzy also kept trying to get in between my legs, still growling, and all of his hair sticking straight up like a feral animal. See, right there, that already freaks me out because dogs have a sense that we don't. They just know things, and they know when something is close by and it's a threat, and his dog was already on high alert. They said the second I closed the door, all hell breaks loose in the woods. It sounded like 50 grown men had broken out in a full sprint, tearing through the woods. Trees were shaking, branches falling. In my life, I have never been that scared. We got back in the house before I shit my pants, and I got my pistol mag light to figure out what the hell was out there. When the dog and I got back outside, we were surrounded by what sounded like people mumbling. It was everywhere. I shined the light all over the woods and I couldn't see anything, but the sound was coming from all around. It sounded as if you got a full gym of people to baby mumble. You could almost make out words, and that's why I don't think it was an animal. I almost immediately felt sick, like I was having a mix between a panic attack and a full swing of the flu. Oh my God. Why does this remind me of an episode of Game of Thrones with the White Walkers? How scary were those people? Remember that? But this poster wrote, back inside the house, it sounded like people were walking around all night. The windows were creaking, and you could clearly hear the sound of shoes on gravel. The mumbling never stopped. Every time I got up to check the house, my feet would touch the floor, and it would get dead silent. You couldn't hear birds, crickets, frogs, or anything. I was terrified and didn't sleep a wink. The air felt thick and evil all night. That's the only way I can explain the feeling. Imagine a soaking wet quilt being tossed over you. That's how I felt. I'm looking for any answers as to what this could be. This wasn't like the normal spooky stories my grandma and great uncle used to tell me. Okay, so here I am trying as Kimbyr to rationalize, like I always do, like what could this be? Now, there are animals that do sound like humans, especially when they're mating, but usually they're more like moans and screams, not mumbling. However, I looked it up and apparently a weird mumbling sound in the woods, like it's a bunch of people, could actually be the wind. And I know you're going to be like, Kimbyr, really the wind? You're going to blame this on the wind? But it's said that when wind moves through the trees, especially deadfall or trees under tension, creepy, eerie-like, voice-like moans and whispers can be heard, or possibly combined sounds of insects or, maybe even specific animal calls like the red fox or a deer can be amplified by the quiet of the woods at night. And your brain can play tricks on you, especially at night when your sight is very limited, making uncommon sounds seem like human voices or even larger creatures, which we will get to. But I'm not going into the woods anytime soon. And even if it's just the wind, it's terrifying. But then why would it stop when he stepped foot onto the floor? And he even said there were no sounds, not even crickets or birds. But let's go to the comments. The top one from Senes was, this sounds similar to stories I heard about Sasquatch and the Sasquatch Chronicles. The human-sounding words, the sound of walking around at night, the loud crashing through the woods, dead silence, and your dog's extreme fear all lend to those stories. OP responded, thank you. I had originally thought it sounded similar, but it just didn't feel like the right explanation. I don't know if that makes sense, but this felt more evil, like it was actively wanting to hurt us. Everything I previously know about Sasquatch encounters was that for the most part, they were peaceful, just made a bit of a fuss. Someone told them to check for handprints up high because apparently Sasquatch is tall, and others chimed in saying they also let off a smell like a dumpster or BO musk. And I'm just going to say, I'm not much of a Sasquatch believer, but then again, I don't know enough about those things to know whether they are real. However, this next comment was more on the logical side. They wrote, the feeling of being sick, paranoid, and worried is a classic example of infrasound. Your body was probably being blasted with so much low frequency sound that you had a reaction to it. It also explains why your dog was so antsy. And I was like, wait a minute, what sound? Infrasound? I mean, that's new to me. So I went to Mr. Google so that we could get educated. And it's sound waves with frequencies below the lower limit of human audibility. And these frequencies are produced by natural events occurring like maybe an oncoming volcano, an earthquake, high winds, which I mentioned. And although inaudible, these long wavelengths, low frequency waves can travel vast distances and actually can be felt through vibrations. And sometimes they can cause physiological effects like dizziness, nausea, and a lot of times they're used for monitoring geological and atmospheric events. They're also from things like aircraft, large ships, wind turbines, explosions, or even heavy traffic far away. And I was like, wow. I was wondering if you had ever experienced anything like this before. Now, I wasn't planning on grabbing a story from Backwoods Creepy subreddit, but there I was. It's specifically for scary stories that take place in the wilderness, in where the wilderness plays a significant role in the story. Stories should be true accounts, and they use the honor system, and they said, happy camping. And I was thinking, no. Camping is a no for me, but this story came up when I Googled infrasound. It's entitled North Georgia Weird Humming in the Middle of the Night While Camping. The poster said, so I've been sitting on this experience for a while. I guess just not wanting to make a big deal out of nothing. But after reading some of the stories here and on related subs, I would really like an answer to what I experienced. Back in about March of this year, I went camping with a friend, my boyfriend, and 3 dogs. My friend slept in his tent with his dog, and I slept in my tent with my 2 dogs and my boyfriend. My friend's tent was about 30 feet away from ours, and we were camping in North Georgia mountains off an old forest on a service road. We were right next to a creek. For context, I'm an experienced backpacker and I'm familiar with the unusual nighttime sounds like rustling in the leaves, sticks breaking, cicadas, and I have a lot of experience camping by myself. So it's rare that I get spooked out by anything other than other humans nearby, as I'm aware of the dangers of traveling solo as a woman. However, this particular night, I wake up in the middle of the night with a sense of absolute dread that I've never felt before. I check my phone and it's about 3:30 to 4 a.m. I really have to use the bathroom, and I was debating on whether I wanted to try to put my hiking boots on and venture outside to go, or just try to hold it until daylight. I didn't want to wake up the dogs because if they heard me putting on my boots, they likely want to go outside to go to the bathroom as well. I'm still in the tent, and that is when I notice it. It's almost like a hum, but not in the pleasant way where it's a tune or anything like that. It's a low-pitched hum that was reverberating throughout the campsite and forest and through my body. It had two tones. It started with a relatively higher pitch and would switch to the relatively lower pitch after a period of time. And then it would start over without a break in the sound at all. It wasn't soft either. It felt like it was covering the entire wooded area we were in. It didn't sound like an animal, a person, a machine, or anything I'd ever heard. And I have to say, we have dogs again in the woods late at night. And it's also between 3 and 4 a.m., typical witching hours from other scary stories that we've read. And she camps alone. That right there freaked me out altogether. I'm way too afraid to even go look outside if I hear a sound. And the whole woods, that's a bunch of noises. But there is more. She wrote, at this point, I absolutely cannot hold off going to the bathroom any longer. I quickly put on my hiking boots and quietly tell the dogs to stay put. My boyfriend is still sleeping. I unzip the tent, go outside, and the entire campsite was covered in the spooky ass fog. But it felt like my vision was foggy, not the actual air. I couldn't see a damn thing. The two-tone humming then got louder. I do my business maybe 5 feet from my tent, sorry, but there's no way I was venturing any further than that. And quickly, nope, the hell back to my tent and bury myself in my sleeping bag with a sweatshirt over my head to try and drown out and ignore the humming. The dogs raise their heads and growl a few times throughout this experience, but that isn't unusual for them when camping. I never saw any figures or lights in the woods, but I also was not looking for them, and I was trying to ignore the entire experience. Does anyone know what this humming could have been? Humming, mumbling, strange noises accompanied by weird feelings, and in this story, a strange spooky fog. Now, where the studio that I'm in is located, we have marine layer outside, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but if you do live near the beach, it's this shallow, cool, moist blanket of air that forms over the ocean, trapped beneath a layer of warmer air. And basically, it's a fog that rolls and it covers everything. It is really spooky to me. And at night, it covers entire parks over here. It's so eerie looking that I'm going to have to get a picture for you tonight if I can, but it's been raining here in LA. But it is just this fog. And again, we're talking about fog. We're talking about scary stories in the woods, dogs. Anytime I'm walking back to my car and I see that fog outside, it really freaks me out. So that alone in this story would be creepy. But let's go to the comments. One of the top comments was telling them a similar experience they had. They said at 4:30 a.m. on September 17th of 2024, they just had this low frequency hum or buzzing that felt like when a NASA rocket would break through the atmosphere when they lived in Florida. As far as the low rumble it gave the house. But for several seconds, it started to dissipate, and then moments later, a helicopter went by. The humming was not of a helicopter. They said they had helicopters go over their house hundreds of times, and they never made the house have a low frequency type of hum. And I'm thinking, are they answering or are they just sharing their story? Because I definitely like other stories, and I think it's interesting. I was thinking, are they just sharing their own experience and not really answering? Because another commenter did answer, saying they think they know what it is. They said, I live in Jasper, Georgia, near a marble mine. Is it mining equipment? 4 a.m. on Sunday, April 7th of 2024, I felt it on and off. Over the last 1.5 years, she said, my husband doesn't hear or feel it, but the buzz always makes me jittery. I'd never heard of a marble mine before, and I don't know what the equipment sounds like, but that's interesting. And another poster said, I live in Greenville, South Carolina, and I've been experiencing this for the last 2 years. A few nights ago, though, I was sitting on my couch and my eardrum started feeling a ton of pressure, like I was driving through mountains. No noise at this point, but it became so intense, it felt like a literal heaviness over my entire body, but especially my eardrums. A few minutes after this started, I thought I saw a flash of light out the window, shrugged it off. Then the humming started. I recorded it. Spent the next morning trying to convince my husband that something was happening. I happened to go to my local news station page later in the day, and there was multiple videos and reports the night prior of a meteor-looking ball of light that streaked through the sky the same time I experienced this. I spent so much time trying to figure out this humming recently, but the videos, corroboration this time confirmed to me something is definitely going on around here. My husband swears it's Donaldson testing jet engines. I'm not so convinced that they're running tests at 1:30 or 2 in the morning. Well, I mean, they could be because usually they're doing tests when people are asleep or they assume there won't be a lot of activity in the city. So possibly. I also used to live in Florida, but I never heard any humming. But I do see a lot of rockets here because now I live in LA where there's SpaceX and they send them off all the time. But do you believe in extraterrestrial activity? I didn't until I watched a few documentaries recently on things that the government didn't want us to know about, including some interesting materials that have been found by a Harvard professor. I think his name is Avi Loeb. Him and his team found interstellar fragments with unusual compositions. And they're considered potential evidence of extraterrestrial technology, which I can believe. I mean, have you ever seen how small the Earth is in the solar system? That could be a whole video in and of itself because I think that's scary. That there we are with black holes and this vast solar system that we don't even know about. I feel like that is going to make me not be able to sleep at night. But I told you, I read these and it already freaked me out. And this next one is from the Appalachian subreddit, from Blues with Beer. And they wrote, I'll make a shorter story from a longer one involving sensitive auras. But once I was with a girl on Big Frog Mountain at dusk, miles away from anyone, and we decided to walk up a trail when right behind the car, I stepped in a mud puddle with odd-looking light brownish water. I pointed the unusual color out to her, and then we started walking. Not far up the trail, she started getting scared, and we went back to the car. In the car, we started making out while lying in the front seat, and she had her hand draped out the window. I felt an odd sensation in my back, and it happened before when people were behind me, so I told her to pull her hand in, which she did. A few minutes later, I felt the sensation in my back again, but it felt more urgent. I rolled her window up, but being a horny-ass teenager, continued with the makeout session. A few minutes later, it felt like someone had stuck a live wire into my back. I sat up, I started the car, and I headed back down the mountain. She was obviously confused and asked me what was going on and what was wrong. I replied, I didn't know, but something was wrong somewhere. We went back to my parents' house and was assured by them that the family was okay. Having calmed down somewhat, we ate a little dinner, then started to leave. After I opened the car door for her, I walked around the back of the car. While walking, I glanced at the back of the car and saw handprints in the same color of the mysterious mud puddle on the car. The last one was over the back window, and it was obvious someone was watching us while inching their way to the front driver's side window. When I saw the handprints, it was like being hit with a lightning bolt, and I knew what had happened. Cold chills ran all over me. I got her out of the car, and as soon as she saw the prints, she knew too. This story is the absolute truth, so help me, and I will never forget it. I was just going to say, wait a minute, what happened? What does he mean that they just knew? I think others weren't so sure either because the top comment was, I was honestly waiting for a man, bear, pig. That's terrifying. And I think that person definitely watched way too much South Park. But someone else said, I've had that instinct, the static jolt feeling when I felt like someone was watching me many times. And more times than not, I would catch someone near me. And others just said this story was scary, and that's agreed. I think it is too. Unexplainable things scare me, as you can probably tell. I try to rationalize everything so that I don't stay scared too long. But I was thinking, like, what did he mean by him and his girlfriend knew? Like that someone was watching them? Or was it something scarier that I'm missing here? Let me know in the comments. I know he realized that somebody was making their way towards the car, but what was the puddle of mud and the weird liquid? Did that have anything to do with it? I don't know. I was a little bit confused. And y'all don't know this about me, but I used to own a home out in the Appalachian Mountains, in Pigeon Forge to be exact, which is specifically at the gateway to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And it was beautiful. I bought it as an investment property when I was in law school, and my dad had one similar 10 minutes away from me. They were on a rental program that was sort of like Airbnb back then, before Airbnb existed. But I'm not here to just tell you this because I wanted to share a personal thing about me. No, it's because they burned to the ground the same day. It was absolutely devastating. Now, it was a result of a huge fire. It was the Gatlinburg wildfires in 2016, and they were a disaster. They took lives, and it was one of the deadliest wildfires out there. There were over 17,000 acres burned, and I think 14,000 people or more had to evacuate. It all started with 2 teenagers, but the wind carried the embers all over the place. Now, that's not paranormal, but to me, it was very eerie and scary nonetheless, because in the beginning, to see this beautiful house, and I'll put it on the screen, to see this beautiful house and then know that it absolutely burned to the ground and left nothing. I've told you in other videos, mostly on my other channel, I'm terrified of fires. But the reason I told you this is because I am taking you from Tennessee to Salem, Massachusetts, where my dad is from. And this is a newer story, only about 6 months ago, and it was in the ghosts subreddit. The poster answered the question, have you ever stayed in a rental, whether it's a Vrbo, an Airbnb, that you felt was haunted? If so, where was it? This person wrote, Salem, Massachusetts, Essex Street. Airbnb will not disclose the address. On the last night of our visit, I woke up at 3:20 a.m. Out of habit, I always check the time on my phone. I noticed the bathroom, hallway, and kitchen lights were on. Both of my friends were giggling in the living room. I found this odd. We all went to bed after midnight. My first instinct was, are they investigating without me? I heard them both giggle again, and I presumed they were doing fine without me, so I fell back to sleep. It was around 8 a.m. or so. I was up in bed looking at my phone. One of my friends stepped into my bedroom and asked, did you hear anything last night? I excitedly shared what I saw. I woke up at 3:20 a.m. Lights were on, which I found super odd. Both were giggling. I assumed both were investigating. I chose not to join, and I fell back to sleep. Her eyes grew wide. Her face was in shock. That's not what happened, she said. And I was like, oh no, I have a feeling this is going to be spooky. She went on to say, our other friend was harassed by the wife of a captain, likely the first owners, in her sleep. They're talking about the ghost of the wife of the captain, I'm assuming. It said my other friend was sleeping on the couch, and she heard mumbling from the master bedroom. She walked to the doorway of the master bedroom to see our friend's leg straight out to the side, as if she was being pulled out of bed. Our friend was screaming in her sleep. She immediately recited the Lord's Prayer. Our friend in bed shot up, awake, and gasped loudly. They both moved into the living room and sat in shock, quietly on the couch for some time, and they eventually fell asleep in the living room. They never turned on any of the lights. They never laughed. The lady's spirit manipulated my environment to prevent me from helping. And I was like, wait a minute. How did they know it was the wife of a captain? I have so many questions, but it's not over yet. She wrote, the lady's spirit made it very clear we were not welcome. She also taught me that spirits can manipulate our environment or our mind to trick us. She knew I was a medium. Had I heard my friends in distress, I would have sensed her energy and determined she was harassing us. I have been to many haunted locations repeatedly with incredible experiences. However, this home was tops. I will never stay at this home again. Someone well-versed on manipulating what we can see is a no thank you for me. LOL. I mean, you are in Salem, Massachusetts, so what did you expect? But the first comment was from Miss March Payne, and she said, it's interesting that she assumed the spirit of someone who was most likely Christian in life would be deterred by the Lord's Prayer. It's not like the ghost was a demon or anything. But the poster was quick to explain. She said, no assumption was made. It was the first thing that came to mind. Recite. If your upbringing was via a specific religion and you were taught to recite or chant a specific set of words for protection, you'll probably do so. Reciting words, chanting, even humming a song during a stressful or fearful situation can dispel a negative situation. It calms you and others. It has nothing to do with what religion or belief structure the spirit believes in. Highly likely if she hummed Mr. Rogers' Won't You Be My Neighbor, the same result would have happened. Okay, that kind of made me laugh with the Mr. Rogers because I could just imagine like a little train coming around and him putting his shoes on. But in all seriousness, if you have been here for a bit, I wasn't a believer in ghosts until I started experiencing things. And now I do believe. She said she was a medium, which I thought was interesting. And she also used the word investigating. So I'm assuming that this was, a haunted Airbnb that they visited on purpose. And someone said, this is an interesting and creepy story. If you're a medium, if so, pretty damn cool. How did you not sense the entity before it was able to manipulate you? Why didn't you sense the bad energy of this woman upon arrival? And I feel like that reminds me of when someone is psychic and someone makes a joke saying like, oh, well, you didn't see that coming. If you knew something bad was going to happen, why didn't you know if you're a psychic? I don't know how mediumship actually works, even though I do have a friend that's a medium, but I do think you usually have to be more intentional about wanting to speak from an entity rather than being a clairvoyant where you can sense that they're there, but I'm not really sure. However, I Googled haunted Airbnbs on Essex Street in Salem, Massachusetts, and wouldn't you know it, there is all kinds of haunted hotels and whatnot over there. But this one right here, I'm putting on the screen, says a descendant of the Salem witch trials haunts this house. But I have to say, as someone who, delves into real life stories about really horrifying things in true crime, the interior of this house to me looked more like cheesy Halloween than spooky, scary old Victorian. Because I swear I've seen those gargoyles at Spirit Halloween. But anyway, the winding staircase and the chandelier are actually pretty nice little touches. But speaking of haunted places in Salem, Massachusetts, I was scrolling around in the ghost subreddit and I stumbled upon a few photos and I thought this was kind of interesting. The title of the post was Ghost Caught on Camera at the Hawthorne Hotel in Salem, Massachusetts. The poster wrote, we stayed overnight in the most haunted room at the Hawthorne Hotel in Salem, Massachusetts. Well, first of all, I don't know what the Hawthorne Hotel is, so why don't we just take a little peek at what it is? Good old Mr. Google said that the Hawthorne Hotel in Salem is famously considered one of America's most haunted hotels, known for paranormal activity like disembodied voices. Okay, I've never heard it called that before, but moving furniture and sightings of ghostly figures, especially on the 3rd and 6th floors, with room 325 and room 612 being focal points for encounters linked to the hotel's history, including its location on land that once belonged to the Salem witch trial victim, Bridget Bishop. So room 325 and room 612. They frequently report that there's lights turning off and on, strange noises, and apparitions. In the 6th floor, there's sightings of ghostly women in white, unexplained sounds, and in the tavern, the ship's wheel on display is said to turn on its own. And in the basement, in 1997, fire might have left energy, causing paranormal activity. And all this is interesting. And now that we have my favorite thing, which is context, let's go back to what the poster said happened to him. They wrote, we had decided to investigate the entire building and came upon this room on the 2nd floor. It was empty except for a few small pieces of furniture, chairs mostly, and this mirror. No other people were in the room with us. In the first 2 photos, you can see us start to walk up to the mirror and begin taking photos. Okay, photo number 1 looks like a guy taking a selfie with his phone and said mirror. And as you can see on the left, there's a female that's several feet behind him, also with a camera coming up towards the mirror. The second picture is both of them now taking photos in the mirror, and we can see they're both in frame. But the poster goes on to explain, by the 3rd photo, a face starts to appear in the window behind us. Now, this is probably the most fascinating and exciting piece of evidence we've ever caught. What do you think? Well, this is me, Kimber, telling you. I'm putting up on the screen. This is them smiling into the mirror, and there is a window behind them, and they're saying that there's a face. Well, luckily, I did zoom in on the next photo, and here we can look at it right now. And I see it. It kind of looks like to me like an old witch. What do you think? There is a face right there. The first comment said, it looks like one of those old men from the Muppets that sit up in the balcony heckling everyone. And I was saying, exactly, I know who they're talking about. It's those two grumpy old men in the Muppets. I think they're like Statler and Waldorf or something like that. And it looks like Statler for sure. And I learned a new word from the person who commented next. They said flat out pareidolia. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it means the psychological tendency to perceive meaningful patterns, especially faces or figures in random or ambiguous visual stimuli, like seeing faces in clouds, the man in the moon, or shapes in rocks, stemming from the brain's efficient pattern matching to find significance in randomness, serving as an evolutionary survival tool to quickly spot threats or familiar things. That's pretty cool. I feel like I see those all the time. But basically, the person's saying that you're just seeing things. And someone else said, looks like the ghost of Billy the Puppet from the movie Saw. You know, the little one that rides on a tricycle? I can see that too. A lot of people couldn't see the face at all, which I thought was interesting. So a lot of the comments were just making fun of these photos and even calling the guy with the phone the ghost or the girl with the camera. But one comment was sticking up for the poster. They said, to everyone saying pareidolia, do you not see the distinct features present? Beard, hairline, shadows? I'm confused. Edited accusations are valid, but this seems more than just pareidolia, in my opinion. That's a whole ass face. To be fair, I think a lot of people didn't scroll through the photos because many comments were about how it's just your girlfriend's reflection and this and that. I don't really think they were spotting what OP intended, and I said that as well. I don't think people were seeing it. And OP actually responded saying, loving that some of you think we edited this. No edits here, just a cropped photo to see more clearly. Only the two of us in that room, not a third person standing out of view. Even though I love that some honestly believe that. Also, if it's pareidolia, why would the face slowly appear over a series of photos? Why wouldn't it be there before she walked in front of it? No one moved. No cars drove by. We were on the second floor. You can see when we captured these photos in our most recent video on YouTube. Seems spooky to us. Now darn it, I didn't go look for the video on YouTube. If I find it, I will put it here so that we can see this progression that the poster is talking about. But Grim Girl 80 commented, I actually see 3 ghosts in this picture. One at the bottom of the window looks straight up in the center. There are 2 light eyes that have a body form to it. And then on the left of the eyes, a woman standing in a doorway. Okay, now I have to say at first I was like, those eyes are definitely a chandelier glowing. If you look at the photo, the blown up version, yes, you can see 2 lights in the center, but I mean, that's a lamp, right? You can see the chandelier hanging or a lamp in the background. But what I did think was interesting is when I tried to look for the woman in the doorway, I was assuming they meant the girlfriend. But then when I looked closer, when you know it, there's a figure of a woman standing in a doorway. I'm going to circle it. She kind of looks like she has dark hair, and you can see half of her face and neck and maybe a white dress of some kind, which I thought was freaky. And since I showed some photos, I went and dug deeper, and I went into the unexplained subreddit, where I found an interesting video that had me questioning things as well. And my favorite color is orange, so I thought at first, oh, I have to see this, a glowing orange orb in the sky at night. But are you ready? This is also fairly new from only 7 months ago in Salinas, California. On May 11th, OP explained, there were no flashing lights on it, and before they took the video, it was staying still, then moving fast, then slow. It was moving kind of like a drone, up, down, left, right, and would stop and go again. So let's take a look, shall we? So it does look pretty high up in the sky. It definitely looks higher than buildings. And I don't know whether this house is on the first floor or higher than that. That information wasn't provided. But it is sort of gliding through the air. And although they said that nothing was flashing, it definitely looks to me like there's flickering, or as someone called it, breathing, like the lights had a rhythm to them. I blew it up really big on my computer screen, and it definitely looked like a circle. Now, the top comment said, I saw something exactly like this 5 or 6 years ago. a bit closer, but same color, silent, and it danced a bit too. Like it would stop, move up and down, and move on again. It eventually just disappeared. I thought ball lightning, but my understanding is that happens when storms are around. And this was a crisp, clear, cool night in autumn. Another person said, something like this happened to me a couple years ago in the North Woods of Wisconsin. I went out to watch a storm pass over the lake. A mile south of us and noticed in front of the neighbor's house 2 orange lights like this stayed still with a bright white one that moved between them. Weirdest part was when the lights were there, all the lights were on in the neighbor's house and they turned off the instant the other lights disappeared. That's interesting. However, as I started looking at it more, it did resemble what somebody in the comments said, one of those Japanese paper lanterns. Now, I don't know how far they can go as far as how high they can go, but if you look at it carefully, it does look like the bottom is lit up with a flame, almost like a tiny little air balloon. It was Purple Kitten 444 that said, looks like a paper lantern. And then others saw it too, and they said, okay, you can see the flame flickering, with another saying, solved. Thanks for bringing objectivity to the discussion. And I did find another video showing an actual lantern in the sky, and it really does look familiar. But what do you think? A UFO or a rogue lantern? Let me know. And now we have our last story. It's from the Paranormal subreddit entitled Scratches Appearing on My Body in Real Time. They said, my husband, son, and I just moved to a new apartment about a month ago. Everything was fine here so far, except the fact that I had very bad dreams nearly every night about my husband, like that he hates me. And I was going to comment, oh, what's new? I'm kind of joking, but for me, it's not uncommon to dream of my fears, including that my husband hates me, or is mean to me, or ignoring me, as well as other people that I love and care about, rather than happy dreams. So I'd love to know what you dream about, but let's continue. She said, anyway, I've had unexplained scratches on my arm showing up. I figured that I was scratching myself in my sleep. Well, that was until tonight. My husband was sitting at his gaming desk playing his games. I was standing beside his desk just talking when I felt a burning sensation on the back of my right upper thigh. I looked, and there was a scratch. I wasn't wearing any pants, just a t-shirt and underwear, so I figured I somehow scratched myself on something. It was super long, going across my upper thigh and under my butt. I showed my husband, and we both said, weird, but no big deal. Then I feel a sensation again. I look, and there's another scratch above the first on my lower right butt cheek. It wasn't there 30 seconds earlier. I never left that spot. So I go get a better look in the mirror and show my husband again. He also says it was not there when I showed him the first scratch. I'm confused at this point. Still haven't sat down, didn't go anywhere but to the bathroom to check out the scratch and back to standing beside his desk. I feel the burning again. I run back to the mirror, and on top of my right butt cheek, there's multiple scratches, like 4, maybe 5 scratch marks together in a row. That freaked me out because it looked like an animal or person did it, not scratching myself in the corner of something walking around the house. Plus, the fact that my body didn't touch anything since I discovered the first scratch. Now, I'm not the type of person to blame everything on paranormal. Every other weird thing I always find a reasonable excuse for. I've been talking with my husband trying to come up with a reason for this. I'm very confused right now. Well, I'm just going to wait until we read the comments to say anything. The top comment was long, but they said, I just had similar things happen when I had a dark attachment. Nothing worked. Or if it did, it only caused it to get worse later. But then I found the law of dominion, and the scratches and other bad things just stopped and stayed stopped. What is it? The law of dominion is a law put forth by the prime source creator to protect all of humanity from dark and evil entities. What does it do? This law prevents creatures and beings like demons, vampires, black-eyed children, skinwalkers, and any evil entity from entering a home or enclosed in private space without permission. How does this manifest with most dark entities? Well, most evil entities will beg or demand entry, or try and trick people with sounds or voices to go out into deep woods or darkness alone. How do I personally invoke the law of dominion? I call Prime Source Creator into myself to heal, guide, protect, reveal, communicate, and manifest in the way best for my current spiritual growth and well-being. I call upon all angels, ancestors, soul groups, spirit guides, and beings of light, all directly connected to Prime Source Creator, to surround and heal, reveal, manifest, guide, and illuminate in the way best for my current spiritual growth and well-being. Where I dwell is holy ground. Everywhere I look and walk is holy ground. Okay, so she goes on to explain this. It's a little bit convoluted and crazy, and I've never heard of anything like it before, but it's sort of like calling on a higher power to make these so-called dark entities dissipate. I don't know. It's a little too weird, but I will say, I also get scratches on my body. John knows this, but to me, I feel like they were coming maybe out of nowhere, but then I realized maybe it's my bra strap or like a sharp tag, because you know what? Tags can be pretty sharp, and when they're rustling around near your neck, you could get a cut there. And then there are the times when I run around and I forget that I hit myself on something, and there are memes about that. Like, where did this bruise come from? And then the woman forgets that she literally ran into a table 2 days before, mostly because we're pretty busy. But the next comment mentioned a dark entity as well. And I was like, wow, all this dark entity talk. They said that usually if something is physically harming you, then you're dealing with a darker entity, i.e. a demon. Your bad dreams every night that involve your husband are also red flags. Not only have you been having bad dreams almost every night, but it involves your husband. This is how they like to oppress, straining relationships, causing stress, disrupting sleep, etc. I know you said you moved to this new place. Have you ever experienced anything prior to moving? Or have you and your husband dabbled in any occult? I would definitely take this seriously. Now, the OP did respond to this saying they haven't had anything prior to this happen with the scratches. And they did have similar dreams about their husband before they moved, but not every night, just once in a while. She said, I do have abandonment trauma from my childhood, so I always thought it was my brain processing that. Neither of us dabbled in anything. Neither of us are religious or have an established belief or practice. I'm more open to spiritual and paranormal side of things than he is, but I don't practice anything. But okay, wait. It gets more interesting. Someone with a little more of a rational theory said, respectfully, you probably won't like this, but it sounds like the previous tenants had scabies. Oh, no, please, not real bugs. Oh, and it says they may have passed them on to you. Scabies are microscopic bugs that live just under your skin. They burrow, leaving red scratches on your body. They're very common and often unknowingly transmitted on money or by shaking hands, and they will infest furniture, bedding, carpets, towels, anywhere they can, really. They tend to stay below chest height, and scratches mainly appear around the groin, butt, and legs. The scratches sometimes get itchy, but you usually don't feel them until they've happened. If one person in the family gets them, everyone will get them. So ask your spouse, kids, husband, if they have any scratches. And I'm thinking, oh my God, stop. That's a whole other scary story compilation. Bed bugs, scabies, weird critters. Ugh. That's even worse than dark entities in my point of view. But let me go to you and ask, what do you think of these stories? Are you more of a believer in the weird extraterrestrial or paranormal activity or dark entities and demons? Or are you more of the rational person who has a theory that can be explained? I think I'm a little bit of both, but these stories definitely keep me up at night. So that's all I have for you today. I will see you in my very next video. Until then, stay safe. Bye.